Imagine this. A canvas where time itself seems to hold its breath, painted by Zdzislaw Beksinski in the dead of a Polish winter, 1985. Whispers say he locked himself in his Sanic studio for weeks, driven by a dream so vivid it haunted his waking hours. A vision of silent figures gathered around a fire, their faces erased by shadow. This untitled masterpiece begins with a hook that grips your soul. What if those figures aren't human but echoes of a world long forgotten? Let's dive into the abyss. Beksinski created this during the twilight of the Cold War, a time when Poland groaned under martial law's iron fist. His mind was a battlefield, obsessed with mortality, inspired by the surreal landscapes of his nightmares, yet wrestling with a despair that threatened to swallow him whole. Leukemia loomed in his family's history, a shadow he couldn't escape, and this painting became his silent scream. He worked alone, the creak of his easel the only sound against the snow-muted world outside, his hands trembling as he fought to capture the intangible. The artistic process was a cinematic dance of light and darkness. Beksinski wielded oil paints like a sorcerer, layering deep charcoals and burnt umbers to sculpt the jagged stone pillars that rise like ancient sentinels from a misty void. Golden ochres and fiery oranges blaze at their peaks and in the central fire, contrasting the oppressive blacks and grays that swallow the figures below. His technique, meticulous, almost obsessive, involved fine brushes for the delicate flames, broad strokes for the rugged terrain, and a haunting composition where the eye is drawn to the fire's glow, only to be lost in the fog. Those faceless silhouettes, hunched around the blaze, seem to pulse with an eerie life, their lack of features a deliberate void that invites your imagination to fill the gap. Historically, this work emerged as Poland's underground art scene rebelled against censorship, a reflection of a society yearning for freedom yet trapped in silence. The misty expanse could symbolize the uncertainty of that era, while the fire hints at a fragile hope, or a final farewell. Symbolism runs deep. The pillars might be tombstones of a lost civilization, the fire a ritual to summon or appease something ancient, and the figures, perhaps souls bound to an eternal vigil. Some interpret it as Beksinski's meditation on death, a personal confrontation with his fears, painted with a rawness that chills the spine. When unveiled, the painting stunned viewers. Art critics in the 1980s called it disturbing, even macabre, with some galleries refusing to display it, fearing it would unsettle patrons. Yet it found a cult following among those who saw beauty in its darkness, its legacy growing as Beksinski's posthumous fame soared after his tragic murder in 2005. Today it's a cornerstone of surrealist art, inspiring filmmakers, writers, and dreamers who seek to unravel its mysteries. Its influence lingers in the eerie atmospheres of modern horror, a testament to a man who painted what others dared not see. Close your eyes. Feel the damp mist on your skin, hear the crackle of that fire, see the figures turn toward you, slowly, silently. This is more than a painting, it's a portal. Beksinski's brushstrokes whisper from beyond, asking, will you join them or flee into the light? The choice hangs in the air, as heavy as the fog as the last ember fades into the night. Hold your breath. A painting so raw it feels alive pulses before you. This untitled work by Zdzislaw Beksinski, crafted in 1984, hides a secret that seeps into your bones. The artist claimed he saw these skeletal lovers in a fever dream, their embrace a silent wail against a world that refused to hear. Created in the dim light of his Sanic studio, this image hooks you instantly. Why do these emaciated figures cling so desperately, and what tragedy birthed them? Let's step into their story. Beksinski painted this during a winter of personal torment, the mid-1980s when Poland's martial law cast a pall over every soul. His wife's illness and his own growing dread of death fueled a restless obsession with decay and human connection. Alone in his attic, surrounded by the creak of frostbitten wood, he wrestled with despair, his brush a lifeline to exorcise the visions that plagued him. This wasn't just art, it was a confession, a struggle to capture love's endurance amid ruin, inspired by the fragile hope he saw in his own marriage against the odds. The process was a visceral ballet of emotion and technique. Beksinski layered oils with a surgeon's precision, blending sepia tones and burnt siennas to craft the skeletal forms, their bones gleaming like polished ivory against a murky, amber-hued background. His brushstrokes, delicate yet jagged, etched every rib, every hollow eye socket, creating a composition that draws you into the center where their embrace tightens. The lack of flesh, the ghostly translucence of their skin, and the way their hands clutch with desperate tenderness are unique strokes of genius, turning a nightmare into a haunting love letter. The canvas seems to breathe, the figures swaying as if caught in an eternal dance. This work emerged from a Poland suffocating under political oppression, where art became a rebellion against silence. The skeletal lovers might reflect the nation's own emaciation, starved of freedom, yet clinging to each other for survival. Symbolism runs deep. Their embrace could signify love transcending death, a metaphor for resilience amid loss, or a grim reminder of mortality's inevitability. Some see it as Beksinski's meditation on his own fears, a personal dialogue with the void, painted with a tenderness that cuts deeper than horror. When it debuted, the painting shocked. Critics in 1984 labeled it grotesque, with some galleries shunning it for its unsettling intimacy. Yet, a quiet reverence grew among those who felt its emotional weight, its legacy blossoming after Beksinski's murder in 2005. Today, it's a touchstone for surrealist art, influencing filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro and inspiring countless explorations of love's dark edges. Its power lies in its ability to unsettle and uplift, a paradox that keeps it alive in the collective imagination. Close your eyes. Feel the chill of that attic air, hear the faint rasp of their bones rubbing together, see the amber light flicker across their hollow frames. This is no mere painting, it's a heartbeat frozen in time, a love that defies the grave. Beksinski's hand lingers here, whispering through the silence. In the end, even the broken hold on. And as the light fades, their embrace remains, a shadow etched forever against the void. Picture this: a desolate march through fog-shrouded ruins, where three spectral figures, two colossal guardians flanking a frail, childlike form, trudge toward an unknown doom. This untitled 1972 masterpiece by Zdzislaw Beksinski grips you with a chilling mystery. Are these beings fleeing apocalypse or leading us into it? Whispers from the artist's own lips reveal he painted it after a recurring nightmare of endless wandering, a vision so vivid it blurred the line between sleep and canvas. Dive with me into this haunting odyssey. Beksinski birthed this work in 1972, secluded in his modest Sanek studio in southern Poland, a converted attic where the weight of his obsessions pressed like the fog in his art. At 43 he was deep in his fantastic period, tormented by visions of decay and isolation that stemmed from childhood wartime horrors, witnessing Sanek's occupation during World War II, the bombs that scarred his hometown. His wife's fragile health and his own gnawing anxiety about mortality fueled a frantic drive. He painted obsessively, often through sleepless nights, struggling against self-doubt that whispered his surreal dreams were too grotesque for the world. Inspired by the surrealists like Salvador Dali and his own subconscious, yet haunted by a fear of interpretation, he refused titles, letting the raw emotion speak. This piece emerged from a battle with inner demons, a cathartic release where each stroke was a defiance against the void. The artistic process unfolded like a slow descent into madness. Beksinski layered oil on hardboard with meticulous, almost ritualistic precision, blending muted oranges, deep purples and inky blacks to evoke a twilight haze that swallows the scene. His brushwork, fine and feathery for the ethereal mist, rough and textured for the figure's tattered shrouds, creates a composition that pulls your gaze downward to the debris-strewn ground, fragments like shattered bones or forgotten papers whispering untold stories. The towering figures loom with skeletal frames wrapped in decaying cloth, their heads bowed in eternal resignation, while the central, smaller entity clutches at them, its form eroded as if by time's relentless wind. Unique to Beksinski's style, the lack of distinct faces invites projection, turning viewers into unwilling participants. The palette's warm undertones clash with the cold desolation, heightening the tension like a breath held too long. Historically, 1972 Poland simmered under communist repression, a decade after the thawing of Stalinist terror but still gripped by censorship and economic strife. Beksinski, fresh from abandoning photography for painting, channeled the nation's collective trauma, the scars of World War II, the Holocaust's shadow over Eastern Europe, into surreal landscapes that evaded political scrutiny yet screamed silent rebellion. Socially, it reflected a society fragmented by division, where families clung together amid uncertainty, much like the figure's desperate unity. Influences from Gothic literature and Baroque architecture, which he studied in Krakow, infused the work with a sense of decayed grandeur. Symbolism pulses through every element. The trio might represent family bonds eroded by fate, echoing Beksinski's own later tragedies, or humanity's futile march toward oblivion, the debris symbolizing discarded memories or the fallout of war. The fog veils truth, a metaphor for existential doubt, while the guardian's protective yet ominous stance hints at love's double edge, salvation or entrapment. Interpreters see it as Beksinski's confrontation with death, the the central figure a vulnerable self amid protective yet destructive forces, a personal allegory for his fears of loss. Upon its quiet emergence in underground Polish circles, the painting unnerved audiences. Critics in the 1970s dismissed it as morbid escapism, with state galleries shunning its dystopian vibe amid enforced socialist realism. Yet it resonated with dissident artists, gaining cult status in Europe by the 1980s. Beksinski's murder in 2005 amplified its legacy, inspiring horror auteurs like Ari Aster and influencing dark fantasy in games and films. Today, it endures as a beacon of surreal introspection, challenging us to face our shadows. Lean in closer. Feel the chill mist coil around your ankles, hear the soft crunch of debris underfoot, sense the figure's silent plea as they vanish into the haze. This isn't just paint, it's a mirror to the soul's wanderings. Beksinski's vision lingers, a quiet echo. In the fog of existence, we walk together yet alone toward horizons that swallow us whole. Imagine standing at the mouth of an endless chasm, where colossal hooded specters lean in from jagged walls, their empty gazes fixed on a tiny defiant figure below clutching a flickering lantern. This untitled 1980 masterpiece by Zdzislaw Beksinski hooks you with an unspoken dread. Is this lone wanderer marching toward salvation or eternal condemnation? Legends whisper that Beksinski dreamed of this scene during a stormy night, the thunder echoing like accusatory voices, compelling him to immortalize it before dawn broke. Let's descend into its depths. Beksinski conjured this vision in 1980, holed up in his dimly lit Sanek studio, a sanctuary amid Poland's turbulent landscape. At 51 he was entrenched in his fantastic period, a phase marked by relentless exploration of the subconscious, fueled by childhood wartime traumas and a deepening fixation on death's inevitability. His wife's ongoing health struggles and the shadow of his son's future suicide, though unforeseen, amplified his inner turmoil, turning each canvas into a battlefield against despair. Obsessed with capturing photographed dreams, he labored for weeks, his hands stained with oil, wrestling with visions that blurred reality and nightmare. Inspiration struck from Gothic cathedrals and Baroque shadows, but his true muse was the void, a personal abyss he probed to find meaning in chaos, all while classical music thrummed in the background, a counterpoint to his silent screams. The artistic process was a mesmerizing ritual of shadow and light. Beksinski applied oils to meticulously prepared hardboard panels, layering rich terracottas, deep umbers and glowing ambers to forge the canyon's oppressive walls, their texture rough like eroded bone. His brushstrokes, sweeping for the vast, converging lines that draw the eye inexorably downward, delicate for the hooded figure's tattered robes, create a vertiginous composition, where perspective warps into infinity. The specters, skeletal and cloaked, seem carved from the rock itself, their heads bowed in judgment, while the solitary figure's lantern casts a feeble halo, a pinpoint of warmth amid the encroaching gloom. Unique to his style, the absence of clear faces evokes universal anonymity, and the hazy atmosphere, achieved through subtle glazing, thickens the air with palpable tension, as if the canvas breathes dread. This painting arose amid Poland's Solidarity movement, a time of defiant hope clashing with communist crackdowns, culminating in martial law just a year later. Beksinski, though apolitical on the surface, channeled the era's suffocating atmosphere, the surveillance, the silenced voices, into surreal metaphors of confinement and scrutiny. Socially, it mirrored a nation trapped in ideological canyons, where individuals faced collective judgment, influenced by his architectural background that twisted familiar structures into dystopian forms. Echoes of World War II's ruins, which scarred his youth in occupied Sanek, infused the work with a historical weight, transforming personal hauntings into broader commentaries on human fragility. Symbolism weaves through the scene like mist. The canyon symbolizes life's narrow path, hemmed by fate's unyielding walls. The hooded figures represent ancestors, deities, or society's watchful eyes, their lean suggesting accusation or mourning. The lantern embodies fragile enlightenment or futile resistance against overwhelming darkness. Interpreters view it as Beksinski's allegory for existential isolation, the lone soul navigating Judgment Day, a reflection of his own reclusive battles with mortality and meaning. Some see biblical undertones, a valley of shadows, while others detect a cry against authoritarianism, the figures as silent oppressors. Debuting in underground exhibitions, the painting elicited gasps and unease. 1980s critics decried its morbidity, with some Polish galleries hesitant amid censorship fears, labeling it escapist horror. Yet, it captivated a niche audience drawn to its emotional rawness, its legacy exploding posthumously after Beksinski's 2005 murder. Today, it inspires dark art movements, influencing video games like Dark Souls, and films evoking atmospheric terror, a timeless emblem of surreal introspection that challenges viewers to confront their own abysses. Draw nearer. Sense the chill wind whipping through the chasm, hear the distant rustle of cloaks like whispers of the damned, watch the lantern's glow waver as shadows close in. This isn't mere art, it's a threshold. Beksinski's strokes beckon from the gloom, murmuring, "In the canyon of the soul, we all walk alone, our light a fleeting spark against the eternal night." Envision a world unraveling at the seams. A lone, bandaged figure crawls through ash-choked ruins, blood seeping from its wounds, while a fiery apocalypse rages in the distance and a dark shape plummets from the sky like divine judgment. This untitled 1976 gem by Zdzislaw Beksinski seizes your throat with a visceral question. Is this survivor fleeing the end or embracing it? Rumors swirl that Beksinski sketched it feverishly after witnessing a factory fire in his hometown, the flames mirroring the infernos of his nightmares, urging him to capture humanity's fragile gasp. Join me as we crawl through its scorched heart. Beksinski forged this piece in 1976, ensconced in his Sanic studio, a cluttered haven of canvases and classical records, where the outside world's chaos seeped through cracked windows. Nearing his late 40s, he was immersed in his fantastic realism phase, a period shadowed by resurgent memories of World War II's devastation, which had razed parts of Sanic during his youth. Personal demons clawed at him. The lingering grief from his father's death, coupled with an obsessive dread of nuclear annihilation amid Cold War tensions. He painted in isolation, his mind a storm of inspiration from dystopian literature like Orwell's visions and his own vivid dreams, yet plagued by doubts that his grotesque tableaus were too alienating. Struggles mounted as he balanced family life with this compulsion, often working until dawn, his hands cramped from endless revisions, driven by a why that echoed existential terror. What remains when civilization crumbles? The creation process was a symphony of destruction and delicacy. Beksinski slathered oils onto hardboard with a palette knife's edge for the gritty foreground, blending scorching reds, molten oranges, and ashen grays to evoke a hellish glow that bathes the scene in infernal light. His strokes, broad and chaotic for the distant burning structures, precise and haunting for the figure's elongated limbs, build a composition that thrusts the viewer into the desolation, the eye drawn from the plummeting black form overhead to the crawling entity's desperate reach. The bandaged head, stark white against the carnage, oozes crimson, a unique focal point achieved through layered glazes that make the blood seem wet, almost tactile. Ruins scatter like forgotten relics, twisted metal, overturned carts, rendered with architectural precision from his training, turning the landscape into a post-apocalyptic wasteland that pulses with implied motion, the air thick with implied smoke that chokes the senses. Emerging in 1976, this work captured Poland's undercurrents of unrest, a nation still healing from post-war scars while facing economic stagnation and Soviet influence. Beksinski, influenced by the era's environmental disasters and the specter of global conflict, like the Vietnam War's televised horrors, infused it with social commentary on human resilience amid ruin. His architectural background twisted familiar urban forms into nightmarish decay, reflecting a society rebuilding yet haunted by fragility. Broader influences included Baroque masters' dramatic lighting and surrealist subconscious dives, molding a canvas that spoke to collective anxieties without overt politics, evading censors in a repressed regime. Symbolism saturates every inch. The crawling figure embodies humanity's primal survival instinct, bandaged wounds a metaphor for unhealed traumas. The falling object might signify impending doom or a fallen savior, while the fiery backdrop evokes purgatory or nuclear fallout, a nod to Beksinski's apocalypse fixation. Interpretations abound. Some see it as a self-portrait of artistic struggle, the crawl a metaphor for creation's pain. Others detect religious undertones, a damned soul in Judgment's valley. At its core, it's Beksinski's dialogue with mortality, the isolation amplifying themes of abandonment in an indifferent universe. Unveiled in private viewings, the painting provoked visceral reactions. 1970s critics recoiled at its bleakness, deeming it nihilistic in a time-craving optimism, with some Polish outlets sidelining it for its disturbing intensity. Yet, it enchanted underground enthusiasts, its legacy surging after Beksinski's 2005 tragedy. Now, it fuels modern dystopian narratives in films like Mad Max sequels and art exploring climate collapse, an enduring icon of surreal horror that compels introspection on our fragile existence. Step closer. Inhale the acrid smoke, feel the grit under your palms, hear the distant roar of flames as the figure's fingers scrape the earth. This isn't paint, it's a prophecy. Beksinski's essence clings here, murmuring through the ashes. When the world burns, what do we become but shadows crawling toward the light that may never come?